Are we seeing the beginning of the end of the FIA's authority in Formula One? Can a commentator change the narrative of an entire championship with a single statement? What Martin Brundle just said about Lewis Hamilton's sanction in Mexico has not only divided the fan community, it could rewrite the rules of the game. Formula One is not just about speed, strategy, and technology. It is also politics, perception, and narrative. And in that field, few voices have the weight, credibility, and resonance that Martin Brundle has. Former Formula One driver with more than 150 Grand Prix contested in his career, Brundle is not just any commentator. His time at teams like Benetton, McLaren, and Ligier gives him a technical authority that few can match. But what truly makes him unique is his ability to read between the lines, to interpret not only what happens on the track but what moves in the shadows of the paddock. What others are silent, he says, and this time he has said it all. For years, his direct but always respectful style has earned him the respect of even the teams he has criticized the most. He doesn't talk just to talk. He is not carried away by flags or sympathies. And that is what has caused his latest intervention to have caused an earthquake in the regulatory structure of the sport. Because if Martin Brundle raises his voice, something really serious is happening. In the latest episode of the F1 show, the official podcast of Sky Sports, Brundle put aside any filter and bluntly attacked the FIA. The reason? The 10-second penalty imposed on Lewis Hamilton during the Mexican Grand Prix. But his anger wasn't about the penalty itself. It was because of what it represented. Because while Hamilton was severely punished, Max Verstappen, according to Brundle, committed a much more serious offense and was not even investigated. That asymmetry, that apparent double standard, was what lit the fuse. Brundle not only criticized the lack of sanction against the Dutchman, but he did so in very harsh terms. He described with surgical precision how Verstappen, at the start of the GP, not only cut turns 1, 2, and 3 of the circuit, but never had any intention of taking the legal line. He accelerated across the grass as if that were the official route, regained speed before the others, and avoided all risks, gaining meters without penalty. For Brundle, this wasn't just an infraction. It was a mockery of the regulations. What most disturbed many within the paddock was not the criticism itself, but the tone. Brundle spoke of impunity, of dangerous precedents, and especially what these types of decisions cause, a silent but constant erosion of trust in the FIA. Because if drivers, teams, and the public stop believing that the rules are applied fairly, the entire scaffolding of the sport begins to shake. This was not a simple editorial comment. It was a frontal attack, a public complaint with name and surname. And coming from who it comes from, it couldn't go unnoticed. Brundle knows the regulations in detail. Talked to engineers, team managers, drivers, stewards. His accusation has basis, context, and force. It is not just an opinion, it is a technical judgment backed by years of experience. The most serious thing, however, is what his words imply for the immediate future. If the FIA does not respond, if it does not clarify the criteria, if it does not offer transparency, it runs the risk of remaining a selective institution, vulnerable to the most lethal criticisms, those of injustice and favoritism. And in a sport where the margins are millimeters, the perception of injustice is a bomb that can explode in any race. Brundle knows it. And that's why he chose this moment, this medium, and these words. Because beyond a sanction to Hamilton, what is at stake is the very soul of Formula One. To understand the media fire that Martin Brundle has caused and why his words have resonated so strongly, it is essential to closely analyze what really happened on the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez track during the 2025 Mexican Grand Prix. Because it is not a simple difference of opinions. What we witnessed was a chain of actions, omissions, and decisions that have ignited one of the hottest debates in recent years. Are the rules being applied fairly and consistently in Formula One? The tension was already palpable from the start. With adrenaline overflowing in each car, 4 drivers rushed in parallel towards turn 1. Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen. It was a shocking image, 4 cars lined up as if it were a final stretch, but in the worst possible place. The most complicated braking on the circuit, a blind, closed curve with little escape room and with the imminent risk of contact. In this context, prudence is scarce and chaos is almost inevitable. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, seeing themselves trapped, opted for the escape route. But Verstappen was something else. It was a calculated decision, according to many analysts, Brundle among them. Instead of braking or trying to turn as required by the regulations and sporting sense, Max accelerated fully. He launched himself directly onto the grass, without even simulating a clean line. He cut turns 1, 2, and 3 without hesitation. He didn't avoid contact, he avoided the curve. And he did it with such precision that, far from losing time, he gained a strategic position by leaving ahead of his immediate rivals. That maneuver was ignored by the commissioners. There was no investigation. There was no warning. Nothing. And that is where the official narrative begins to fracture. Because if a driver can cut 3 corners in a row without any effort to stay on the track, without any penalty, where is the consistency? Why have others in similar situations received immediate sanctions? The lack of reaction from the commissioners was not only surprising, worthless, but this was only the first act of the drama. The real controversy broke out on lap 6. Lewis Hamilton, who had made up ground and was putting pressure on Verstappen for 3rd position, found himself with an opportunity at turn 4. It was a borderline maneuver like many that have defined races in recent history. Hamilton braked late, tried to take the outside, but in doing so, he stepped on a dirty area without grip. It locked its right front tire and slid off the track across the grass. So far, nothing out of the ordinary. Mistakes under pressure are part of the game. The complicated part came later. Hamilton, when trying to return to the track, did not follow the yellow line that defines the mandatory re-entry path. He returned directly to the track, just ahead of Verstappen. The FIA did not find a direct violation of the race director's notes, because the Briton did not have room to turn towards the marked line due to his speed and the blocking. However, he did consider that he had gained an advantage by returning in front of the Red Bull. And for that, 10 seconds of penalty. Nuance is vital. Hamilton didn't intentionally take a shortcut. He did not use the grass to avoid wasting time. It was a technical error, forced by the conditions of the track and the aggressiveness of the previous maneuver. Instead, Verstappen cut the corners deliberately, early and with strategic benefit. But only one was penalized. Where is the proportionality? Why is someone who makes a mistake in limit conditions penalized and someone who intentionally gains an advantage forgiven? This double standard is what has made Brundle explode. Because in Formula One, the perception of justice is as important as justice itself. Every decision sends a message. And the message that Mexico 2025 left is that not all pilots are being judged with the same criteria. Even when reviewing the telemetry, the data doesn't lie. Hamilton entered with a speed slightly higher than optimal, but within reason for an overtaking maneuver. His mistake was slight. Verstappen, on the other hand, never braked to attempt turn 1. He went straight to the grass. The images, data, and technical analysis coincide. They were very different actions, treated as if they were the same. Formula One has always had a tense relationship with its own rules. From historical incidents such as Senna's sanction in Suzuka 1989, to more recent decisions such as Abu Dhabi 2021, the conflict between the regulations and sporting spirit has been a constant. And in Mexico 2025, that story has been repeated once again. Ferrari, for its part, did not take long to position itself. Fred Vasseur, with his diplomatic but firm style, defended his driver with solid technical arguments. He explained in detail the track conditions, the loss of grip off the line, and the inability to maneuver safely after contact. For Vasseur, the problem is not the existence of a sanction, but the absence of a uniform criterion for everyone. Because while Hamilton made a mistake, so did Verstappen. The difference is that only one was sanctioned. Even within the FIA, pressure began to build. Privately, several commissioners admitted that the debate generated by Brundle has called into question their methodology. And although they publicly maintain their position based on the regulations, there are clear signs that internal meetings are coming to review incident analysis protocols, especially in maneuvers where there are external factors such as dust, lack of visibility, or dirty asphalt. But the most immediate and most dangerous consequence is the precedent that this situation can set. Because now, every maneuver in which a driver cuts a corner, every off-track return, every extreme action, will be analyzed under an infinitely more demanding magnifying glass. The teams will not only study the regulations, they will also study this race, this sanction, this moment. Because if Verstappen was not penalized for cutting 3 corners and Hamilton was penalized for not following an impossible re-entry line, then what is the real red line? And that question is creating an uncomfortable silence among managers. Because what happened in Mexico 2025 is not an isolated case. It is part of a growing sequence of controversial decisions that have called into question the coherence of the FIA's sanctions system. From Abu Dhabi 2021 to Brazil 2023, through inconsistencies in pit exits or ambiguous team orders, the governing body of motorsport has been accumulating criticism. This time, however, the blow came from within, from a voice with weight, with history, with credibility. Because that is what the FIA is at stake now. its credibility. It is no longer enough to apply the regulations. He has to show that he does it fairly, with criteria, with respect for the complexity of the sport. Otherwise, Brundle's narrative that began as an isolated critique may become the new standard of evaluation for every future decision. Are we building a fairer, more humane, more transparent Formula One? Or are we seeing it fragment little by little under the weight of its own contradictions? Silence is no longer an option. The future of this sport is being written now, curve by curve, decision after decision. And perhaps the most honest thing we can do is to keep asking. Always.